to vote on their behalf because they're saying that the other party has not done much for their stronghold. Now, the NDC's former president, John Dramani Mahama, says he has a special connection with the people in the Ashanti region, reason why he believes they should vote massively for the NDC, of course, to win more seats in that region and also to win the presidential elections. Now, President Akufo-Addo is expecting that the Volta region will vote a lot more for the NPP instead of the NDC. So now we're going to take a look at the developmental projects that have been implemented in those regions by the various political parties to see if indeed it is worth expecting them to vote for the other party instead of the party that they've always voted for. And Stephen is here. Patrick Stevenson is here to tell us more. Good morning.
Good morning,
How
brother.
are you?
Good to see you.
Good to see you as well. Had a good weekend, maybe?
Well, good weekend.
Yeah.
But our politicians, 3 or 4 days to elections, as usual, they're saying things. So they give you and I a job to try to figure out, what it is that we can consider. Other than that, I think it's been a good weekend and a good week so far.
Maybe one of these days we should fact check the promises they've made about tertiary education being free to some extent. But we'll focus on that today.
It is dangerous.
It's dangerous? It is dangerous?
It is dangerous. I think we should have that conversation. Maybe Friday. Maybe Friday we should try to, kick things up a little bit in anticipation of what's happening on Monday, so people can appreciate what exactly that means in terms of whether it's feasible, whether people are just doing this for political gains, etc., etc. I think we can have that conversation.
Maybe on Friday, but let's focus on what we have for today. So we're looking at 2 regions.
Yes, 2 regions. So in the last about 2 weeks or so, you see that the campaign intensified, and for some strange reason, I think the NDC spent a lot more time in the Ashanti region. Yeah. The president also spent a lot of time in the Volta region. What was interesting for me, though, was that the president eventually came back to the Ashanti region, which ordinarily would have been a stronghold, which shows there's a lot of work that needs to be done. And if the sessions you have with the 2 professors from University of Ghana has anything to go by, if anybody has been following that very well, I think you get a sense of why, the 2 political parties are going to pay a lot of attention to what's happening in each other's stronghold. But I think before we say anything else about what's there, it's important to indicate that the thinking that somehow a particular political party, because of its origins or, its stronghold, has got to somehow focus on investment in the stronghold, I think it's a little problematic. The reason it's problematic, and I'm saying this as an ordinary Ghanaian, if I don't come from the Volta region or I don't come from the Ashanti region, for example, and say I'm in any of the swing regions, as you have seen time and time again, well, where do I fall? Like, who's supposed to be advocating for me to get a better share of the pie? And it's not something we can just sweep under the rug. So I think it's very important. It appears a little tokenist, the statements of the 2 flag bearers or the 2 major political parties have made. And it's important that as an ordinary citizen, you understand what those statements mean. But having said that, I think we now have to get into the details of whether the things they said are either true or not true.
Okay.
Right? And the very first one that's easier to sort of validate will be the case of the NPP. So the NDC suggesting, for example, that the NPP has taken the people of the Ashanti region for granted. I think there is very little evidence to support that claim, right? But how do we arrive at that conclusion? So we've checked through the budgets and allocations that have been made by by government from 2017, 18, 19, and 20. And they themselves have reported some things on the infrastructure tracker, which you have just put up there, right? So anybody who wants to know for yourself, I mean, you just query that tracker without looking at the quality of the infrastructure and all those other fine things we can talk about in terms of policy. Out of 19,000 projects, 19,000 projects, about 3,062 of these projects have been deployed in the Ashanti region. And I don't think that shows or is evidence to suggest that nothing has been done for the people of the Ashanti region, right? Because you see in the area of, say, communication infrastructure, for example, a lot has been done there. You have nearly 531 projects, different projects that the government reports as having completed. You have in the area of education infrastructure, for example, 300 projects that have been completed. And then you have, I think you can see something here. Maybe you want to run through that. You have road infrastructure as well.
Okay, so road, so road says 295 projects.
Completed.
And 82 still ongoing. Well, I think 82 completed.
Well, 82 completed
and
then
295,
ongoing. Then you have safety.
Let me just enlarge this a little.
Okay, great. Fantastic.
So everybody can see.
Right.
Okay, so from road, let's start with education at least.
Right,
and
yes. And education is one of those very important ones, right?
Yeah. So education, 300. Well, I think the blue means what, ongoing?
No, blue is completed.
Completed,
the
okay. So 300 completed and 371 ongoing.
Right.
Let's go to health.
If you look at health.
Almost similar, 53 completed, 52 ongoing. And housing, 24 completed, 137.
137 at different stages of
ongoing.
implementation.
Yes.
Your road infrastructure, you have about 295, that they've been able to work on, 82 that are different stages of implementation. And I thought that it would be very important to highlight a very important observation from the data that you have just shown. So you see that in the Ashanti region, for example, there appears to have been a lot of focus on water and sanitation, communication infrastructure, and then in the area of education. Very little on road. So if you zoom out a little bit, you see. Look at the frequency. Communication is quite large, then followed by water and sanitation, and then you're seeing things in education infrastructure. So again, out of 19,000 projects, you have 3,000, a little over 3,000 that have been undertaken in the Ashanti region. Does not appear to suggest, that the Ashanti region hasn't been taken care of, or the current government has taken advantage of the people of the Ashanti region without necessarily doing anything good for them. And the point I want to make is, we can't draw these conclusions that because the NPP has a stronghold in the Ashanti region, for some reason, they should be better off than everybody else. In fact, you have a provision in the constitution of this country that suggests that development has got to be evenly distributed across the country. So that means, we have to understand what the needs of a particular region, for example, or district is, and then see the extent to which we can allocate resources to meet these needs. We can't have this narrative of it's my stronghold and so I invest a lot more there. I mean, that just doesn't work. It doesn't, you have this ethnocentric undertones that I think do not support the way the development of the country is. Okay. Just for comparative purposes, I want you to pick out either the central region, which has traditionally been a swing region, or the Volta region, for example. But central, I think, is closer to you.
Let's take
if you apply central region, for instance, and then you probably get a sense of why I am alarmed. So you see the number of projects in the central region. How many? 1,306.
1,306.
So that immediately becomes worrying. So I used to just think that if I come in a swing region, for example, then there's a fiscal penalty that I pay for being independent-minded and choosing, a government based on what I feel my needs are. That's a very worrying observation. So the point, at least from the data we have seen now, and the results that we have seen in the annual budgets that get presented in Parliament from 2017 to now, nothing appears to support the claim that the former president of the republic seems to have been making in the Ashanti region, that this government has taken the people of the Ashanti region for granted.
Okay. Well, let's take a look at the Volta region, and then we can also settle on that.
So you see what has happened to the Volta region, and again, so the Volta region, the total number of projects you're looking at there is something around 887. If the NDC in the Volta region was suggesting that, well, the government has not taken care of you as they had the people in the Ashanti region, that may be we have data to support, because he had about 3,000 projects there as against the 887 projects you have seen in the Volta region. It's not to suggest that the count of projects necessarily is the only metric, because if you don't have projects that are really going to the value chains that addresses the needs of the region, you have a problem. And again, if you look at the areas of the project, in the Ashanti region, you saw a lot in communications.
But there's less here.
Right, there's less here. You saw a lot as well in area of education. There seems to be a lot in education, so education appears to be an either cuts across. Energy infrastructure, there's a lot that has gone into the Volta region than you saw in the Ashanti region. So you see, they seem to have done a lot more for them in certain areas based on the needs of that particular region, I will assume. And again, so on a comparative basis, we've done more in Ashanti than we have for Volta. It's not to suggest that there's there's an ethnocentric bias in the distribution of resources. We shouldn't do that. But I think it's problematic if the flag bearers or the political parties make those claims that because it's not a stronghold, we should not or we should have made a lot more investments in there. Then you flip the conversation around. The NPP was also in the Volta region, and I suspect they talk about these 887 projects and told the people, I remember to use the Green Book as well as a measure of what they also reported as having done, for the people of the Volta region. And there's quite a number of projects. I mean, if you look at the Green Book, for example, you had seen projects in education infrastructure, some education infrastructure that were built in places like the Hafua North South, Bosomche. You have in Carrier, they had all kinds of projects there. The Eastern Corridor Road as well was one of those things that the regime at the time reported a lot of investments that they made in that area. In the area of ICT infrastructure as well, you had some solar panels that were deployed in some districts for the purposes of supporting your telecom masts. So to internet infrastructure. And that as well, I think they built nearly 808 kilometers of fiber optic cable. So they did a lot of things there. It is dangerous to suggest that zero development for the people of the Volta region, right? So when we compare the fact, I think the two political parties in the final leg of their campaign, when we thought that of all we have been doing on fact check and all the conversations you have on food, this show, maybe the conversation would shift to the center. And they did. They were quiet without casting these innuendos. All of a sudden, they went off chains. And last week, or was it over the weekend, the one on education, was it yesterday?
It was just yesterday.
That on education has come up, and we shall bring the facts.
We'll talk about it. But could it be that maybe the NPP quantified it, set up an app to load the details of what they have been able to do, as against the NPP, the NDC putting it in a book? I mean, how many people will get access to the book to read as against, the tracker? Could it be that that's the reason why it's easier for them to say that they've done a lot more, maybe in the Volta region, than the NDC?
You see, so what you have just done is what I would have expected the NPP, for example, to say in the Volta region, that comparatively we have done better. That's safe. And I think since we started fact check, you realize that at a point they stopped putting putting ballpark figures to things they had done and moved to we have done more, we are better off.
Yeah.
Those sort of provide a bit of credence, but to outrightly say zero is worrying. Maybe your point is right. This is a better way. This is an improvement from the Green Book that people had to go and look for. So it's a portal you can query, but the difficulty is it's just infrastructure that you can query out of this. The thing with governance is that there are soft part of governance. That may be implementation of a policy, maybe a reform.
Yeah.
That is equally very important, which is missing from things like this. Is brick and mortar governance. Much as we like it, we want to shift the conversation away from just merely counting, infrastructure projects as things that, political parties have been able to do in their government.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And wait.
Always a pleasure being here.
Is free tertiary feasible? Just one word. Is
it feasible?
Yes or no?
When the politician says you paint chickens black, don't doubt him. He will catch the chickens in this country, paint them black, and bill you for it, Bella.
You have failed the exam. I said yes or no. You had to give me a proverb. But anyway, we'll talk more about that on Friday when Patrick Stevenson joins us again on Election 360. He's our researcher, top researcher, and he's fact-checking everything ahead of the December 7 polls. Thank you so much for your time.
Always a
and
pleasure.
yes, we still continue the conversation. We'll have a further conversation about the special voting that took place yesterday. What do you make of it? Join us via social media. The hashtag is Election 360. Stephen NT comes next.